Westside. Thank you for being here today. We are here on what is the last Sunday of the first month of a new year. On our calendar, we're sort of at the end of a new beginning. And as I intimated last Sunday, this may be the time when the idea that this new year will bring changes that we have decided to make in order to live a better life, that have fallen by the wayside. Now is not the time to just give up, but to accept the difficulties that will come from making changes. Now is the time to try harder. And I sincerely hope that this place can be part of that for you. That if you want, you can be supported, you can be bolstered by your association with this church. That Westside can and does play an important and hopefully vital role in all of us striving to become, to be better in life. Unitarian Universalism in general, and Westside in particular, is a place that welcomes you as you are, yet hopes, or perhaps acknowledges, that few of us are self-actualized, that we all have opportunity to continue growing, to continue becoming. I've said this before, but some people seem to have everything all figured out, or believe they do. But I'm not one of them. So continuing to grow is important to me, and I believe it is for many of us in this room today. So we welcome people of all different backgrounds, all different philosophies, and from all different faith traditions. And we also welcome atheists. Well, I don't have to tell you, but the United States is a very religious nation. Our country is more religious than the vast majority of the developed world. And during much of our nation's history, to call yourself an atheist was to instantly incur the wrath of practically everyone else in your world. That is still the case in some parts of the United States, but overall, to be an atheist today appears to be less of an issue than it was even a decade ago. By all accounts, the number of non-theists in our country is increasing yearly, particularly among young people. So while there are fewer people in our country who will immediately write you off as a substandard human being for not believing in God, or worse, wish you were eliminated from the planet, there is still a significant portion of our citizenry who believe atheists lack the ability to live a worthwhile and moral life. Now, my view may seem a little arrogant, but I believe history would bear this idea out, that Unitarians and Universalists have typically been a few years, sometimes a significant number of years, ahead of the general population in accepting new ideas and differences in human beings. There were many slavery abolitionists in our past, many suffragettes, many civil rights leaders and participants, many LGBT allies who worked and continue to work today toward justice for all. Even so, each of these appeals to acceptance had to be debated. There were discussions at the local and national levels of the Unitarians and Universalists where people argued against inclusion. But thankfully, those arguments failed, and we continue to march toward progress. To include non-theists within Unitarianism occurred in the early part of the last century. And there were fierce arguments that in order to be a member of one of our congregations, you should probably believe in at least one God. Three Unitarian ministers, John Dietrich, Curtis Reese, and John Francis Potter, were well-known opponents of this idea. They argued that because we are non-creedal, because there is no test of faith, people with no belief in God or the supernatural ought to be allowed membership in our congregations. By 1933, the controversy had all but died down. Non-theists were a growing number of people who joined our churches, societies, and fellowships. In fact, the most reliable number I could find published is that about half Unitarian Universalists identify as non-theistic, the largest identifiable group within our association. Here at Westside, that number has been somewhat higher. The last time we surveyed the congregation, we learned that many Westsiders don't like to be labeled anything at all. But those who would, for the purposes of the survey, choose a label, close to 60% of us identify as non-theistic. Now, my suspicion is that number may be slightly lower today, which is fine, because if we welcome all, even those who do believe in God, would be welcomed in this church. We'll be more certain of our theological diversity later this year when the Committee on Ministry, probably around September, will be conducting a new congregational survey. But in some ways, I wonder what these theological classifications do for us. How does knowing which group in our congregation is largest and which is smallest help us? When you look at our principles and sources of faith, we talk about a wide spectrum of beliefs. We talk about prophetic women and men. We talk about world religions, Eastern religions, Judaism, and earth-centered spirituality. And we even include Christianity. We also talk about humanism, or the way of being in the world non-theistically. Thank God for that, right? Well, a very religious man lived right next door to an atheist. And while the religious one prayed day in and day out and was constantly on his knees in communion with his Lord, the atheist never even looked twice at a church. However, the atheist's life was good. He had a well-paying job, an attractive partner, and his children were healthy and good-natured. Whereas the pious man's job was strenuous and his wages were low. His spouse didn't take care of herself anymore, and his children wouldn't even give him the time of day. So one day, deep in prayer, as usual, he raised his eyes towards heaven and asked, "Dear God, I honor you every day. I ask your advice for every problem and confess to you my every sin. Yet my neighbor, who doesn't even believe in you and certainly never prays, seems blessed with every happiness, while I go poor and suffer many an indignity. Why is this?" And a great voice was heard from above, and it said, "Because he doesn't always bother me." So why would an atheist come to church? Why might an atheist come through those red doors and stay, as so many of them have? Well, as time allows, I listen to a number of podcasts, and one of them I listen to frequently is out of the Center for Inquiry. The Center for Inquiry's mission is to foster a secular society based on science, reason, freedom of inquiry, and humanist values. Their podcast is titled Point of Inquiry, and it has a great deal of wonderful information, but it frequently does something that I also read through a piece written by humanist author Susan Jacoby in the New York Times recently, titled The Blessings of Atheism. Among these, and in other non-theistic people and organizations with which I'm familiar, there is this loud and frequent lament that non-theists have no place to go, no place to commune with others of like mind. How can we have the benefits of a religious community, they ask, without being religious? And yet there are places for atheists to go. There is the North Texas Church of Free Thought. It meets in Irving once a month and has been doing so for a number of years. It's a wonderful organization. I've visited, and I know that the organization meets the needs of a relatively small group of people. There is also an affiliate in Houston. So if you are an atheist and you happen to live in Texas, there are two places you might go for communion. Then there are the Societies of the American Ethical Union. They are specifically humanist, and I admire them. They are also quite small. There is only one group in Texas, and it is surprisingly, or not surprisingly, it's in Austin. There was a wonderful attempt to get one of these started here in the Metroplex by none other than our own Shelley Hatton, who many of you know. But it's no easy task to get an ethical culture society off the ground. At one point, I was taking part in their clergy training program. But look where I am today. And look where Shelley Hatton is today. Currently, there are 25 ethical culture societies in the United States. But I have read, and I have no doubt, that the largest grouping of atheists, humanists, and non-theists that consistently gather in the United States is in the 1,078 congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association. Now, I know Susan Jacoby and the people at the Center for Inquiry know about Unitarian Universalists, yet they have very little interest, it seems, in joining us. And I can only think of one reason why that might be. Now, before I tell you what I believe that answer is, let me preface it with something I've said many times in the past. And that is that on any given Sunday, I am bound to honk off somebody or some group. And I often instantly receive feedback from the offended. On my good days, I say something like, "Thank you for letting me know about this." On my other days, well, I say something else. And I know what I'm about to say may be worthy of material that honks off. So I will ask for permission, or forgiveness in advance. The permission maybe is Freud's, you know what I mean? But even before that, let me give you a personal experience I've related before, that when I lived in Nashville, Tennessee, studying religions at Vanderbilt, I was told over and again that I needed to check out the Unitarians. I did. And I didn't like it. They sang from a hymn book. They had a minister, and I didn't care for ministers. I'm pretty sure he said the word God that day. There was a blessing and some sort of cockamamie prayer. People seemed to be all lovey-dovey. It would be another 5 years before I darkened the door of another Unitarian Universalist church. I lost 5 years of honest, loving community. A community that would have accepted me in a heartbeat if I had shown just a little bit of tolerance. And I don't believe my experience is uncommon. I may be wrong, but I believe the primary reason that many atheists will not consider Unitarian Universalism as a place to be in community with others is because they are unable to tolerate the other worldviews represented in our membership. They are so uncomfortable with spending their free time, their Sundays, with diverse beliefs, that they'd rather stay home and be by themselves. Just like I did. Because Unitarian Universalism, as I understand it today, calls us to even go beyond simple toleration of other ways of seeing the world. We are asked to celebrate, to honor them. We are asked to value the diversity of beliefs that come from a wide variety of people and even accompany them, to be by their side on their own personal quest for truth. Back in my younger days, and I'm ashamed to admit this, I would have been much more likely to ridicule the beliefs of others than to honor them. So why would an atheist come to church? More specifically, why would an atheist come to a Unitarian Universalist church like Westside? Well, there's an old joke that goes something like this: what makes for a good Unitarian Universalist? And the answer is an atheist with children. So our children's religious education program is often a draw for non-theists who want their children to be with other children of progressive parents or guardians. Our curriculum, as part of Unitarian Universalism, helps the young ones become religiously literate in a country that is very religious. And we help our young ones foster respect for different religions and worldviews, even Christianity. Thankfully, these children who grow up here at Westside will be much more tolerant than I used to be. Yet while the children are in religious education, there must be something in the church service that helps the adults want to attend as well. So from this pulpit, there will often be reflections or sermons which hopefully foster respect for different religions and worldviews, even Christianity. But perhaps more than anything else, the reason an atheist might come to this church is to be with other progressive thinkers. Even the most conservative Unitarian Universalist thinker is still more open, more loving, more forgiving than many of the people you will meet on the street. We are a good place to be simply because there are so many good people here. That, to me, is a good enough reason for anyone to come to this church. You know, Unitarianism historically meant belief in one God rather than three, the Orthodox Christian idea of the Trinity. And Universalism historically represented the idea of universal salvation from the fires of hell. It would be logical to then say that a Unitarian Universalist believed in one God and that everyone would go to heaven. But that doesn't quite fit anymore. Because most, certainly not all, but most UUs don't believe in a supernatural intervening God or life after death. So for me, the words Unitarianism and Universalism now mean something different. To me, it now means that we are united. We acknowledge we are in this thing called life together, and that to be together is much better than being alone. And we universally welcome all who also believe we can make this life better in the here and now as we celebrate our diversity of beliefs. Of course, that doesn't have to be your definition of Unitarian Universalism, but I hope you might consider giving it some thought. Because we are a puzzling people. Yet we are all, and our respective beliefs are all, a piece of this wonderful Unitarian Universalist puzzle. Some puzzle pieces may be larger than others, but all of the pieces are necessary in order to complete the picture of what we say we are. Are we going to celebrate the differing beliefs of one another? Or are we merely going to tolerate each other? As a non-theistic Unitarian Universalist minister who believes in Unitarian Universalism, I sit in a place that has the potential to annoy everybody. I will not be religious or spiritual enough for some members, but I will do my best not to exclude a faith tradition that in writing says we are. It's not a space I always like to hold, but it is perhaps exactly where I need to be. Because I believe at my core that we are a faith tradition of inclusion rather than exclusion. And I have witnessed how my own involvement in Unitarian Universalism has changed me from what I used to be to what I am today to what I have the potential to become. And that's the kind of community I want to be a part of. That's the kind of community with which I want to partner in leadership. And that is the kind of community I will strive for and champion for as long as I am here. As we rise in body or spirit and join together in singing our closing hymn, number 170. We'll sing the first